Explore the history, relationships, expertise, and data that go into ensuring Stine growers get maximum yield potential. This is the Stine Seedcast. Here's your host, David Thompson.
Hello, and welcome to the Stine Seedcast. I'm your host, David Thompson, National Marketing and Sales Director for Stine Seed Company. Today, we've got another great episode lined up with special guests, expert insights, and discussion on everything you need to know about maximizing yield potential. Joining us remotely today is Andy Hurst, Seed Technologies Business Manager for UPL Incorporated. I've known Andy for a number of years, going back to our days on the original LibertyLink soybean product launch. Today, we're going to cover what's new in the crop protection arena and UPL's Motif herbicide, which was recently labeled for use with LibertyLink GT27 soybeans. So let's get started. So we're visiting this morning with Andy Hurst, Seed Technologies Business Manager at UPL. Andy is no stranger to Stine. I've known him for a number of years, and he's here to talk about some exciting things happening from the UPL side in the crop protection business. But to get things started, Andy, again, you and I have known each other a long time. Give us a little background about your history in the ag sphere.
For sure, and thank you very much for the opportunity, David. As you mentioned, certainly have had a long and great history. Certainly my experience has just been exceptional with the Stine Seed organization, and we've been able to accomplish a lot of great things in the market in the past, and namely the launch of LibertyLink and soybeans. But my history, I'm originally from Florida, Florida native. I'm a Gator, which not many people admit to being these days at the moment. But I've been in the ag business over 30 years now with various basic manufacturing companies. Most of my background was Bayer and legacy companies, 22 years, and then lately with UPL for the last 5. But I am the marketing lead for what we refer to as our seed and soil health portfolio. So really anything planting time related is what I focus on.
So give us a little background about UPL as an organization. They've got a lot of products in the ag marketplace. Probably maybe not as well known by its name UPL, but they probably know the products.
That's true. And probably for your audience, especially Interline herbicide, which is our glufosinate herbicide brand, is probably the most well known. But UPL is one of the fastest growing companies now in the crop protection industry. We're 5th globally now. Historically in the U.S. market, UPL originated or launched into this market with manufacturing some really significant primary foundation AIs like glufosinate, like esmetolochlor, metribuzin. And a major strength is, we're a basic manufacturer and very vertically backward integrated on most of the big foundation active ingredients. So that's given us a great position from the standpoint of UPL's manufacturing base in India. We've been able to avoid some of the supply chain issues associated with China, which is very dominant in supplying our crop protection business right now. But more recently, I would say UPL has really made a significant inroad in our approach to new technology. And that is versus having a internal discovery organization, we have a concept called Open Ag, where we source technology from the best and brightest discovery startup companies all over the country, as well as the world. And our business model is to develop those technologies and bring them to the market here in the U.S. due to the size and scope and market access that we have.
Fantastic. So, and that was one of the reasons I wanted to have you visit with us today, was you've got a product that we have a lot of interest in from Stine standpoint, and that is Motif herbicide. So a little bit of background. Again, from the Stine side, we've worked with the GT27 soybean trait, which has evolved now to LibertyLink GT27, which is a great soybean package that confers tolerance to glyphosate, glufosinate, and the HPPD inhibitor family of chemistry. So three-way stack. And up to now, the struggle, I think, for us with that trait, great genetics, but we didn't have a great option for an HPPD inhibitor in a lot of the market area. There's a product called the Light 27 that's out there, but it is only available in certain parts of the geography. And so Motif is a product offering from UPL that is now going to be labeled. And I'd like you to talk a little bit about that product and what it means for us with relation to LibertyLink GT27 soybeans.
For sure, David. Motif is our mesotrione herbicide brand in the U.S. market. As you mentioned, it's a very active herbicide in the HPPD family of chemistry, and certainly weed management, weed resistance, and all the associated issues with very few herbicide modes of action that continue to be effective have created a huge need for new herbicide modes of action and a whole different approach to weed management in general, along with chemical weed control. Certainly, all the things like cover crops, more narrow row spacing to canopy the ground sooner, all of the various culture practices combined with good herbicide weed management has been key in terms of dealing with driver weeds like palmer amaranth or water hemp, which can just overtake the world in a matter of days if not controlled properly. So mesotrione and the use pattern for GT27 trait is a Preemergence application. And what this is going to do is really ramp up the robustness of a grower's at-plant herbicide program. We would envision, David, that Motif mesotrione will be combined with metribuzin, which is a just extremely robust pre-program, and also esmetolachlor.
So in that case, you're going to have a great pre-emerge program, which, like we talked about, I think, over the years, one of the things we've heard repeatedly from a lot of the weed scientists are, the best time to kill a weed is before it becomes one, right? Take care of it in the soil before it really becomes a problem.
Pre-Absolutely. And that's a great point. Yeah. All the weed science community would strongly advocate the most robust pre-program possible, given the fact that the number of post-emergence choices that are available still that are effective are very limited due to weed resistance to glyphosate and other modes of action. Even with the new auxin technologies, those are certainly prone to weed resistance development. So the weed science community especially is going to continue to really stand up and advocate for a very robust program. So with the Stine trait package of LibertyLink GT27, just a great avenue to bring HPPD chemistry to bear, along with glufosinate tolerance and glyphosate tolerance in a single package.
So you kind of laid out the different options there, and I think earlier you mentioned it, metribuzin being a part of that mix. So understanding that everybody's farm is different, and so the combination or the recipe that a grower might use for his weed control is different. But what would be a typical approach in your mind for someone who's going to use Motif in a LibertyLink GT27 platform?
Yeah, no, great question. And certainly, as I mentioned, Motif mesotrione at 6 ounces is a recommended pre-emerge rate, combined with metribuzin. Our branded metribuzin is Tricor or Metricor from a UPL perspective. But weed scientists, I would say now, are definitely moving toward more robust rates of metribuzin where it's possible, up to even 3/8 of a pound active of either the dry or liquid formulations. Those two in combination are stout and certainly very effective on most of the amaranth species. In addition, adding esmetolachlor, our moccasin brand esmetolachlor, is another consideration there to have 3 effective modes of action at planting time.
and then a post program of their choice between the options that are available for the LibertyLink GT27 system.
For sure. With that trait package, of course, from Stine, there's an opportunity to combine interline brand glufosinate with glyphosate in a tank mix combination that certainly covers a broad swath of most of the weeds. And then obviously, our recommendation is be timely with that first post application. Certainly, no later than 21 days after planting is very typical. And if for whatever reason you're kept out of the field and weeds are larger, plan on sequential applications of especially the interline glufosinate component to ensure that no amaranth species go to seed and keep the cycle going.
Good. Let's talk briefly about residual. One of the big benefits, I think, of this chemistry is residual. And we hear from a lot of people in the industry about the importance of residual activity. I think there's differing opinions of what amounts to a good residual control program. Is that a differential advantage here with a product like Motif?
Yeah, it certainly is. Adding yet another effective mode of action from the HPPD class of chemistry that historically has not been available for use in soybeans is a significant advantage in terms of more avenues to control resistant weeds before they ever emerge and become an issue. So a lot of flexibility with this trait package and this system, and certainly making mesotrione available for this use pattern has been a major goal of UPL, and very much appreciate the relationship with Stine and working with the weed science community to put all these pieces together for the grower.
So for growers who are planting LibertyLink GT27 soybeans and looking for this option, they can go through their normal crop protection retailer looking for that product.
That's correct. And in the case of Motif, like many herbicides this year with significantly increased acres and a big increase in demand in terms of people wanting to ensure they maximize yield for corn and soybeans with high commodity prices, there's supply issues on just about every major herbicide. So I would suggest that a grower that is thinking about this use pattern should probably secure a position sooner rather than later to make sure he's set up for the planting year.
So that brings up a good point, something I wanted to touch on, because again, I know you've had a long background in the crop protection arena, and it's kind of strange days in a sense in that arena. So I guess what's your take on the crop protection situation? I know there are shortages. What advice do you have for growers who are hearing about these things and trying to make decisions on the crop they're going to plant?
No doubt. And I'd say the short answer is secure product and put it in your warehouse. It's becoming clear that even in scenarios where, retailers feel they have a committed supply coming, that due to supply chain issues and shortages in the market, sometimes, even that committed product doesn't show up to retailers on a timely fashion. Overall, this is stemming back to certainly the supply chain issues here in the U.S., but other countries as well, from some of the issues with COVID and so forth, but especially the U.S. crop protection industry over time has become very dependent on China for technical and active ingredient production, and then many of the key intermediates in crop protection products, and especially herbicides. So, given this scenario now with regulatory crackdowns in China, the Olympics coming there, and the government trying to do things to clean up the air quality and so forth there, has resulted in some very significant shortages and price increases on raw materials, as well as active ingredient technical production in that country. So it's put a crimp, especially given the big increase in acres here in the U.S. market. From a UPL perspective, we're not nearly as dependent. So it's given us an opportunity to dramatically ramp up our capacity, but we still anticipate there's going to be shortages in the market this year.
Okay. So short version, possession is 9/10 of the law, right? Get in the shed.
Yes. Yes. That's a great point.
So what else is going on with UPL that has you excited about the year to come?
Well, and certainly a big focus for me in the past 3 or 4 years, David, has been assembling a seed treatment portfolio for UPL. And we're in a great spot in terms of we've got a broad range of 12 or 13 different foundational active ingredients for seed treatment, and a world-class formulation group as far as formulation chemist with over 40 years of experience that has put together a portfolio that is not only very stable in terms of formulation, but all of our products are compatible with every other product. So for seed companies or dealers wanting to make custom blends or receive end products as custom blends, we're now in a great spot with our traditional chemical seed treatment portfolio. And then we've also got a lot of great new technology in the pipeline, including 2 potential new bionematicides that we're working on that are looking extremely good when combined with our typical synthetic chemistry packages of fungicides and insecticides.
That's exciting. Very good. Well, hey, thanks for coming on and visiting with us. Motif, I think, is going to be a huge weapon for us in the arsenal as it relates to weed management and soybeans. We talk a lot about it's getting harder and harder to kill a weed in soybeans these days. So the more weapons we have, the better. And I think Motif is going to be a great solution for that. We're glad for the partnership and working with the UPL and helping give us that solution for our growers planting LibertyLink GT27 soybean.
Yeah, I think so too, David. And then as a next generation, a product concept that we'll be bringing right behind the Motif branded product with this use pattern will be a premixture of mesotrione and S-metolachlor. Brand name is going to be Coyote, and we'll also include the soybean use pattern for GT27 traded soybeans on that product concept, which would enable and make it very convenient for a grower to mix 2 modes of action there with a metribuzin treatment, for instance, and easily make a 3-way combination at planting time that will be extremely effective.
So, Andy, one thing I wanted to ask you about, again, you've got such a long history in the crop protection business. So just recently it was announced that in the state of Illinois now we have confirmed presence of dicamba-resistant Palmer amaranth. And, of course, you're right from down there in the epicenter where Palmer started here in the U.S. in crop production. So I guess I wanted to get your thoughts, the significance of that as it starts to really creep heavy into the Midwest. I mean, what's your thoughts?
Certainly it is just the most dominant, aggressive weed management challenge that we have. Palmer amaranth is so detrimental to crop yields that just even a few plants can multiply with, thousands of seed produced in a single plant each year. And then the yield loss is really significant with them. So major problem. They're also very adaptable in terms of their genetic makeup. So as a result, they're resistant now to, I think, 5 or 6 different herbicide modes of action. Does represent a huge problem, and certainly the Stine seed launch of the Enlist E3 technology, providing an avenue to allow growers to tank mix interline glufosinate, for instance, with 2,4-D-choline or the Enlist 1 product has been huge in at least having 2 effective modes of action in the same tank to go after problems like this.
And you hit the nail on the head. I think one of the things, from my memory of talking with the weed science community, two effective modes of action, they make sure to stress the word effective, right? Because if you've got one of those that's, marginalized, then that's really not going to be as much use to you. So you got to make sure you have two modes of action that aren't compromised, that can really, really take action on that particular weed.
Yeah, that is key. And certainly from the standpoint of concern about auxin tolerance in general, big topic within the weed science community. And with the Enlist technology, phosphonate and 2,4-D choline can be tank mixed with the Roundup Ready XtendFlex technology. Unfortunately, due to the potential for off-target movement, that tank mix with glufosinate is restricted. So from that standpoint, it requires more of a sequential application approach. But by far, the weed scientists agree when you can combine effective modes of action, either from a residual standpoint and very much so from a post-emergent standpoint, that's a huge advantage in either managing weed resistance or trying to ensure that you protect against it.
Well, and yeah, that's another point you bring up is good is, I know you've worked a lot with Dr. Jason Norsworthy down there in Arkansas. And I know one of the things that really struck me about some of the things he was talking about were the importance of applying two effective modes of action in the same season, as opposed to, I think up here, a lot of times growers thought, well, I can rotate my mode of action and, use a glufosinate-based program one year, and I'll use an HPPD program the next year as my foundational program, and that's just as good. And I don't remember the exact number, but I remember the stats being, the improvement is almost exponential if you're talking about two effective modes of action applied over that same crop in that same year.
That is a great point. And that point combined with ensuring that you use the most robust rate available on a driver weed like Palmer amaranth is another really, really big key point. And I would say that Stine Seed has done a great job in screening varieties for metribuzin tolerance, so that, typically just about every variety in the Stine lineup has a very robust level of tolerance to metribuzin used at planting time. And metribuzin combined with now, Motif mesotrione or esmetolachlor, for example, is a really important part to try to avoid emergence. And then in terms of post applications, being very timely on weeds 3 inches or less is key. And then if there is a miss due to a delay in getting into the field when weeds are larger, using high water volumes, combining two effective post-emergence modes of action like Interline and Enlist 1, for example, and then retreating very soon after the first application. If weeds are large, it's far better for a grower to plan on sequential applications and immediately come back 6 to 7 days later if there's any greenness left in the stem of Palmer amaranth, for example. Historically, the conventional wisdom sometimes has been that if you have a weed that's not completely controlled, you need to let it grow back out before making a follow-up herbicide application. But that is absolutely not true in the case of glufosinate, and certainly not true in terms of Palmer amaranth. Glufosinate is a great green stem herbicide, and a lot of work, as you mentioned, by Jason Norsworthy in Arkansas and other weed scientists like Aaron Hager in Illinois have shown that tightening up that interval on a second application is really, really important.
Well, that's interesting because, you do hear a lot of talk about the idea of sort of hardening off of that weed, right? Like there's that interval afterwards where it's injured, but it's not dead, but it's maybe not going to uptake any more, herbicide. So, you got to let it kind of work it through its system, but maybe that's not the right approach. You hit it while it's down and see, knock it down. Because with Palmer, especially, the last thing you want to do is leave it, burn the edges off of it and leave just an angry amaranth plant out there.
Definitely kick them while they're down, no doubt. Yeah, there's so many auxiliary buds up and down the stem of that plant that it's just key to follow up quickly to ensure you get adequate coverage on all the potential places that plant is going to regrow. So, yeah, an angry palmer is a bad thing.
Well, thanks for joining us today, Andy. Appreciate the insight there and a look at the industry as a whole. Glad you could join us. Thanks for being here.
Very much appreciate the opportunity, as always, David, and look forward to a lot of good things to come.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
That's our time for today. I want to thank all of our guests and listeners for joining us for another episode of the Stine Seedcast. We'll be back again soon with more expert interviews and insights about all things Stine. And to never miss an episode, subscribe to the Stine Seedcast wherever podcasts are found.
To learn more about Stine and its elite corn and soybean genetics, visit stineseed.com. Subscribe to the Stine Seedcast wherever podcasts are found. Stine has yield.